This part of the chapter is a little different than what we've been doing, but trust me, it all gets tied back together. This one's called percent composition. I'll go back. Well, what I could have done is found out the number and divided it just like I did before. Well, what's this got to do with chemistry, you might be asking? What this has to do with chemistry is that once again, we do need the part that we're interested in divided by the whole thing. And there's your formula. That's going to be the whole thing. So right now I need you to find the molar mass of methanol. And when you plugged all that into your handy dandy calculator, the molar mass of methanol is 32.04 grams per mole. This is your molar mass. Okay, now the mass percent of each element. Just like before, we had the part, the number of students I surveyed, divided by the whole, which was the 82, multiplied times 100. That got me my percent. Well, in this case, my part, to begin with, let's start with carbon. I'm interested in carbon over methanol. And because I want mass percent, see it says mass, well, the mass of how many carbons in the compound? 1. There's 1, so that's 12.01 divided by 32.04. Then I'm going to multiply that times 100. So 12.01 divided by 32.04, and I end up with 37% carbon. Let's try the hydrogen. Again, that's going to be the part that's hydrogen. So there's 4 hydrogens. Each one of those weighs that, divided by the whole. So 4 times 1.008 divided by 32.04. And that's 12%. Well, 13%. So I'm going to put that right there. 13%. You can go ahead and keep this to the ones place. Finally, we have oxygen, and there's 1 oxygen. Now, there's 2 ways I can do this. The first way I can take, I'll take the 1 oxygen, divide that by 32.04, so 16 divided by 32.04, and I end up with 50% oxygen. That's one way I could have done it. That's oxygen, that's hydrogen, and then we end up with, I can find it, I'm sure I can. There we go, 37% carbon. Well, there was another way I could have found that. Simply take the maximum number, which is 100, and subtract the sum of these 2 numbers, and guess what? You'll get 100%. Well, in this case, 50. You'll get 50% oxygen because your total has to come up to 100. And that's really all we're going to be doing in these several problems is finding the mass percent of each element, just like I did here with methanol. This is the technical way to write it. The mass percent is the total mass of each, of all of the element that you're concerned with divided by the mass. I suppose I should have had times 100 here. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. Take a minute and read through this. To solve this problem, the first thing I'm going to need to do is find the molar mass of carbon. So the molar mass of this guy ends up being 150.21 grams per mole. If you're not sure how I got that, let me know. Okay, so the part that's carbon, well, there's 10 carbons. Each one of those weighs 12.01. I divide that by 150.21, multiply it times 100, and you end up with 80%. The next one I want to look at is the hydrogen. Well, there's 14 hydrogens. Each one of those weighs that, divided by, there's your part, now divided by the whole, times 100. Let's see, 14 times 1.008 divided by 150.21, and 9%. Again, you can keep these out to the ones place. The last thing I need to do is find the oxygen, and the easiest way to do that is take my total, which is 100%, 100 minus 80 plus the 9, Let's see, so that's 100 minus, that's 11% oxygen. This one should be carbon and hydrogen. And if all three of these add up to 100, you've done your job. Now, could you have done it the other way? Sure. You'd taken 16, which is the mass of one oxygen, divide it by the whole thing. So I'll make sure 16 divided by 150.21 times 100. Yep, 11% oxygen. Oops, sorry, dropped my calculator. Yeah, you've never done that before. Okay, sulfuric acid. Well, to get the formula for sulfuric acid, ick. 8 goes to ick, I goes to ooh. So this came from sulfate. And sulfate has the formula of SO4 2 negative. To be an acid, you got to have a hydrogen. And in this case, I'm going to need 2 hydrogens. So 2 hydrogens and sulfate. Now that's sulfuric acid. We need to find the molar mass of that entire thing. So let's take a minute and find the molar mass. We've got 2 hydrogens times 1.008 plus 32.07 plus 64. That gives me 98.09. That is the molar mass. Molar mass, those are the units of sulfuric acid. So let's start with hydrogen. There's 2 hydrogens. Divide that by the whole. Multiply it times 100. 2 times 1.008 divided by 98.09. And I get 2% hydrogen. For the sulfur, there's 1 sulfur, 32.07. Divide that by 98.09. Multiply that times 100. So 32.07 divided by 98.09. And I end up with 33% sulfur. All right, now for the oxygen, 100 minus 33 plus 2, that gives me 65% oxygen. If these 3 numbers add up to 100, you're done. So we're done with this problem. The next few problems are yours to do. Let me know how you do. Show them to me in class. And the practice problems are listed at the end of the video. Have a great night.